Okay. Now, tell us your name and spell your last name.
Ed Gordon, Gordon.
Okay, and tell us about your history at Aurora High School, what year you graduated, and anything else you'd like to talk about. The first things that pop into your mind.
Well, I graduated in 1964. Played football my senior year. Too busy farming my first 3 years in high school. I didn't really have the time, so waited till my senior year. I think my senior year was probably the most fun I've ever had in my whole life. If I could go back to do anything, I'd go back to my senior year. Had some great teachers. Mrs. Kyle. Had 4 years of math, and I think I had Mrs. Kyle 3 out of 4. So really enjoyed that. Got voted class friendliest my senior year. Bev Schuler and I. Still got the picture in the annual somewhere. So, but had a great senior year.
What did you have to do to be so friendly?
Well, I think we were the friendliest because we talked to more people than anybody else. I think that's how they picked it. So, but it's kind of neat. They had most athletic and most likely to succeed, and it's kind of a fun thing to do.
And you said you were farming. Where was the farm, and
well,
what kind of things did you do there?
We had 150 acres out in back of Mount Tabor Church out on US 50. We were milking 50 head of Holstein cows morning and night. So that kind of limited how much free time I had after school. That's why I really wasn't able to do it till my senior year. But raised corn and hay and did custom baling for other people, just so you could pay for your equipment. It wasn't easy. But I thought when I was a kid, I thought it was terrible growing up on that farm because it was so much work all the time. But looking back, I think it really shaped the direction of my life. So.
And what are the good things that you think about when you talk about that direction? What traits did that instill in you?
Number one, work ethic, because I mean there was always something to do. Anybody that's ever lived on a farm can tell you there's always something to do. So it's not like you're afraid to work. You know things are going to have to be done. Those cows had to be milked. Didn't make any difference. It was Sunday or a holiday or you wanted to be on vacation. The cows still had to be milked. So that was part of it. Responsibility. Well, like I just said, those cows they had to be milked. That's a responsibility that you had to learn, and I just really think, looking back, that it made a big difference.
And when did you start? How did you balance school and farming? Tell us more about that. You said you were doing both there.
Well,
how did that work out?
Well, we got up early. We milked every morning before I went to school, and then by the time I get home in the afternoon, by 5 o'clock in the evening, we were milking again. So, and then time you go in, ate supper, did your homework, is in bed because it's a long day.
And you said you played football your senior year.
Played football my senior year. Lettered. Got to play quite a bit. We had a great team. Had a lot of fun. Bunch of good guys. So.
Who was the coach?
Bob Kennedy and Larry Willen. I was trying to think who the head football coach was. I don't think it was Bob Kennedy. Might have been Bob Kennedy. But we had a lot of fun.
And what other guys do you remember from the team? Who sticks in your mind the most?
Oh, Steve Hastings, David Heiser, Dick Powell, Peachy Wallace, Pat Booth. Those guys are all in my class. I mean, just about everybody that played football that year was a senior, and the year after that they took a big hit because they lost so many kids. Art Workman, all those guys that were seniors played football, and everybody got to play. That was a good thing about it. We all got to play. Obviously, going out my senior year and lettering, they had to get me in sometime or I wouldn't have lettered, so everybody got to play. That was a neat thing about it.
What position did you play on offense and
I played
defense?
defensive tackle and linebacker most of the time. I played very little offensive line once in a while, but mostly defensive tackle. I was about 185 pounds in high school, not quite as big as I am now, but we had a good line. Steve Hastings and I were the tackles, and Dick Powell and Peachy Wallace were the guards. We had a 4-man front line, and it was fun. A lot of good times.
Who was quarterback?
Bob Cheek.
Bob Cheek.
Almost forgot about Bob. Bob was quarterback. Of course, G.R. Hunchel, Sonny Mix, those guys were juniors my senior year. They got a lot of time. They were both excellent running backs, so they played a lot. Good time. High school was a good time for me.
Now,
I came out of my shell in high school.
Okay.
Pretty shy person, you know, being on the farm, and it was a big deal to come to town. I can remember Marsh's restaurant down here on the end of 2nd Street. To come down there on Saturday and go in there and get a cheeseburger was a big deal. It wasn't like it is now. These kids think everybody goes to town all the time, but once a week then, just didn't have the time. There was too many other things going on, but it was a big deal to get to come to town on Saturday and eat lunch somewhere.
Tell us about the other social events or things that you did for
Well,
fun
Ulrich's
back there.
Drugstore. Everybody was at Ulrich's after school. We were allowed to leave school to go to lunch, to come to town for lunch. The Wagon Wheel Restaurant, Ulrich's, places like that, we'd come for lunch. Had a half hour, but we were close enough. You could be over here and have lunch, be back over there. Ulrich's was the biggest hangout. That's where everybody hung. If you wanted to see somebody after school, that's where they'd be. You knew if you had the time, they'd be in there. So that's where everybody went.
Tell us about some of the other stores that you remember from back then.
Well, Tandy's Clothing, Neff's Shoe Store. I bought shoes from Neff's Shoe Store from the time I was big enough to get a pair of shoes. I can remember the cool thing where you stood up on that. It was like an X-ray machine, and you could look in there and see your feet. That was a big deal. As a kid, everybody thought that was really cool. But yeah, Neff's Shoe Store, Chrisman Brothers Clothing was right there. There was every store, the dime store, 5 and Dime. Everybody kind of hung in there. You was going to go look for something. That's where everybody went. It was a thriving town back in the 60s. A lot going on downtown Aurora in the 60s.
And what do you remember about nightlife, going out on the weekends or during, you were working during the week and
Yeah.
on the farm and school? Did you ever what did you do on the weekends if you had?
We had the drive-in, the Starlight Drive-In, which was right up the road from my house. Of course, I always had to come to Aurora to get my date and then drive back to the drive-in, but we had the drive-in out there. That was the big thing. I mean, everybody go to the drive-in or the Palace Theater. That was a hopping place. Good movies in there every weekend. Didn't cost but about a quarter to go to the show. So you could have some good dates for $2 or $3 back then when gas was 26 cents a gallon, and you didn't need $25 for the weekend. You could go out $5 and have a great weekend.
And so that leaves you some other
That's
questions.
mine, Stevie.
That leaves you some other questions. When did you get your first car and what was it?
I got my first car my senior year, the summer of my senior year, and it was a 59 Chevy Impala. It was gray, had the big wings on the back, automatic. I thought that was the neatest car. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was a good car.
What color was it?
It was gray.
Gray.
I kept it for a few years, and then I got a 64 Impala. That was really a nice car. It was black and had red and white interior, and it was a nice car.
So you graduated in '64, and you got a '64 Impala. How'd you swing that?
Well, I made money working all through the summer, so I thought it was time to get rid of the old 59, so I got me a 64, and I actually kept the 64 till I got married in '68. I had it for 4 more years, so it's a good car. Good car.
And you talked about dates, so tell us more about that. Not the details, but some of the who'd you go out with?
Well, you know what? Ironically, I can remember the first girl I ever dated. I never had a date till I was a senior in high school, and I went out. I had a date with Sharon Sterling. And her and I'm sure we probably went to the drive-in, if I remember correctly, and just scared to death. But we had a good time. It got better. Started dating Brenda Schuler and pretty much went with her my whole senior year. She had my leather sweater and my class ring like everybody did back then.
Yeah, tell us more about that. Talk
Well,
more
you know,
about how that
if
all
you had a
worked. That's
steady-
kind of a tradition that
Yeah,
maybe-
and it was. If you had a steady girlfriend and you had a class ring, she took your class ring, and they'd wrap all that stuff on it so it fit them, of course. And then if you had a leather jacket or a leather sweater, they wore it to all the football games and kind of showed support for the kids playing football. It's kind of cool. It really was. It was, and everybody did that. Everybody had somebody's class ring if they were dating them pretty steady. So it was kind of a
Do
traditional
you
thing.
remember how much your ring cost or how much your jacket cost?
Oh wow! I think my ring was maybe $150, and I know they're about three or 400 now. And it was nice. It had the red inlay with two white lines across it, a black A in the center, then had my initials in 1964 on it. So pretty classy ring. I still got it. Still have it.
And-
Probably have it down here. Dan wants me to bring it down. So.
And did you buy those locally, or how did that?
Yeah, I think we did buy them. There was a jewelry store in Lawrenceburg that did class rings, and you could get anything you wanted. And I think just about everybody had red and white. Had red inset with white lines on it. I know a lot of the girls' class rings looked just like mine, so only they were smaller.
And you talked about the jacket. Where would you buy a jacket? Where would you buy your clothes then? What? How did that all
Well,
work out?
clothes mostly at Christmas. I mean, it was locally right next to the shoe store, so you could get your clothes, you could get your shoes. Come to town, you go in there and pick out whatever you wanted. I not really remember where. I think we got the jacket through the school, and then you had to take it somewhere and have your letter sewn on and everything. But that was a big deal. If you got a letter and a jacket, that was a big deal.
Now we talk about the class of '64, all they've done to make the museum a reality, the dances you had, the bash, the '60s bash. What do you think brings the classmates together to do things like that? What are some of the feelings and traits that make people want to do things like that? What's good about that?
Well, we always had a close class. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you explain what pulls those people together, but it just seemed like our class was always close together. Close-knit group. Everybody got along well. Even after we got out of school, everybody pretty much stayed in touch. And somebody come up with this a few years ago. Let's do something at the Farmers Fair, because there's so many people who move away, but they always come back for Farmers Fair. So what better time to be able to see a bunch of kids? That's where the '60s bash came from, how it originated. Somebody said, let's do a dance with every class from the '60s. Well, you knew everybody on both sides, because by graduating in '64, I started in 1960. So those kids, when I was a senior, those kids were coming into school. And then the kids that were older than you knew all those kids, because when you came into school, they were juniors or seniors. You played football with them. You saw them in the hall. The school wasn't that big. You pretty much knew everybody. Got to talk to them. And that's how the '60s bash started. Was just a group of people said, let's bring everybody from the '60s together. The '60s was a pretty cool time to be alive. I'm telling you, if I could go back and do the '60s over again, I'd do that too, because it was just a neat time. It was a neat time in the whole world.
And what'd you like about it? What was going on there?
Oh my gosh, dances. We went to the park dances. They had dances up here at the Presbyterian Church on Friday nights. Lawrenceburg Fairgrounds, they had dances, and if you wanted to see somebody on the weekends, one of those places you could find them. Of course, Frisch's was a staple. Everybody hung out after the football games, or if you went to the dance, after the dance was over, everybody was at Frisch's, and you just kept, you kept seeing the people that you were with, and and lived with around here, and everybody pretty much stayed in touch.
How'd you do all this without cell phones and computers?
You know what? I don't think we ever missed them. I really don't. It was amazing. I mean, I think you talked so much more to people, and I don't like them. If I could do away with something, it'd be the first thing I'd get rid of is cell phones, because we just didn't need them.
So when you grew up, there weren't the 7-digit phone numbers even. There
No.
weren't dial phones.
No.
What was your phone number?
679R. I don't know why I remember that, but we were talking about that a while back, and a bunch of people could remember their 3 digits with a letter, and then when we first had phones, we had a party line. I mean, if you picked the phone up and somebody was talking, you had to wait till they finished their conversation before you could call somebody. So it came a long way since I was a kid, let me tell you. We had no computers, we had no cell phones. We didn't have near the technology. Don't get me wrong, the technology's great, but we made it fine without cell phones. We really did. And I don't know, I think the kids knew each other better. I think you had a closer bond because you did more talking rather than just text on your cell phone. You don't need to see them. I think the 60s was a great time to be alive. The Beatles, they happened in the 60s. Are just lots of things that took place in the 60s. We've seen our lifetime, our age group has seen a ton of technology, a ton since we were kids. Just really changed. I'm going to really date myself here. When I was growing up and we were on the farm, we never had indoor plumbing. We had a cistern. And my senior year, my dad finally put an indoor bathroom in. We had an outhouse. So, I mean, that's just the way it was, and most places did. We didn't have, there was a lot of things that we had a well. We drank water out of that well, and the cistern was for bathing and stuff, and the well we used to drink and cook. Just come a long way since the 60s.
So,
lots of technology.
Who were some of the adults that influenced you, whether it was teachers or just...
Well, Mrs. Kyle, she kind of made me want to learn more about math and science. And of course, by growing up on a farm, I took agriculture for 4 years. I had Mr. Kaniga, great volleyball player. That guy was a super volleyball player. He loved to play volleyball. Yeah, we played volleyball just about every day at lunch. Played intramural volleyball. And he really enjoyed that. And then going back to that, Ronnie Craig and myself, John Godfrey and Wayne Rumsey were on a cattle judging team our senior year, and we went all the way to the state fair and won our division at the state fair. The 4 of us judging dairy cattle at the state fair.
So you were all classmates?
Yep.
Were you all the same age?
Yeah, all except Wayne. The 3 of us were seniors, he was a junior. And we really had of course, everybody was, they were on a farm or knew cattle, and it was enjoyable. We had a good time. It was really fun to go to the state fair and compete against some of these kids that, been doing this for a long time. That was kind of a neat thing to be part of.
So you're in your prime. It's 20 years after World War II.
Right.
And so do you remember World War I veterans, of course, being around?
Yes.
So, were there any Civil War veterans left?
Very few. There were some from World War I, there were some. My dad was in World War II in the Navy. I was born on my mom and dad's wedding anniversary. So that was kind of cool. He was in the Navy for 4 years, and he actually ran a service station out here on Conwell Street for years before he bought the farm. Him and my uncle, right at the bottom of Trester Hill. The only thing left is the bottom of it. There's a block building right there at the bottom of Trester Hill where you turn to come onto Conwell. In fact, I was born upstairs there.
Really?
Chuck Alcott's dad, who was Dr. Alcott, delivered me upstairs of the service station out there.
And what was the name of the service station?
It was a mobile station. I don't remember exactly what it was. Whether it was, I think it was Gordon's service station. I do have some. I found some bottle openers that he had from the station. So, but it was a pretty thriving station for a while, and they did really well. My dad, and my uncle were the kind of guys that could fix anything. So they did a lot of mechanics work, and it was. I don't remember a whole lot about that other than what they told me, but because we moved to the farm by the time I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Now, did your dad and mom grow up here locally?
Yeah. My grandma, my dad's mom, actually lived over on Hanover Street. And my grandpa, he was a big fisherman. He used to fish in the river all the time. He loved to fish for catfish. I can remember going over there, and he'd be making dough balls out of rye bread or a box of Wheaties to go fishing. He just absolutely loved to fish. So, and my mom was a school teacher. She taught school out at Wilmington, and I've actually got some pictures of the classes out there when she was teaching school. So,
now, what was your mom's name and her maiden name?
her maiden name was Helen Cann.
How do you spell?
Cann.
Okay.
And her and my dad got married. Let's see, they got married in '45 when he came back from the war, and then a year later, on their anniversary, I was born. So, and she taught school for a couple years, and then after that, she got breast cancer, and she passed away when I was 10. So.
Oh my gosh, sorry to hear that.
Yep, it was kind of rough.
That has an effect on a young man.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to talk about. Tell us how that shaped you.
Well, it was. I mean, when you're 10 years old and you lose your mom, that's a big blow. And of course, you wonder what's going to happen. And there's Dad trying to run the farm and raise 2 kids. My dad never got married. Again, he raised both of us. My sister and I, we both made it through high school. Never had any problems, and we did all right. He did all right. I thanked him several times for taking care of us and keeping us together, and something didn't happen like it could have. You never know, things could happen, but really was glad it turned out the way it did.
So time goes on, and you have your own family. Tell us how long you've been married, what your wife's maiden name is.
Married Connie McCool from Lawrenceburg. That's happened a lot. Lawrenceburg Aurora kids. We got married in '68. I was working at Seagram's when we got married. Of course, they laid you off. You might work 6-7 months a year, then you got laid off. Well, once I got married, I couldn't be doing that, so I had to find me another job, and she was working in Lawrenceburg. And that was my kind of the end of my Aurora era for a while, because when we got married, we were both working in Lawrenceburg, so we moved to Lawrenceburg. But ironically, I stayed on in the '70s, and that was actually on the Aurora Lions Club for several years, and on the fair committee for about 4 years when I was with the Lions Club. I was close enough to come back and forth, and I knew a lot of the guys that was on here, so I came back and worked on the Lions Club. We've been married 49 years in August. We just had our 49th wedding anniversary. I have 2 boys, 5 grandkids. My son moved back to Aurora last year. That's kind of ironic because he was living in Lawrenceburg too, and now him and his wife have a house here in Aurora on Market Street. So what goes around comes around. Back in Aurora. So,
well, offspring often don't like to hear from their predecessors, their parents, their grandparents, and so forth. What do you tell your children or your grandchildren? If anything, they might not ask you if any questions about it, but do you ever talk about your earlier times?
Oh yeah. They can't believe that we never had color TV. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. They think I'm kidding when I tell them that. When we did get a TV, it only had 3 channels. They think that's ancient. They think I'm ancient because of that. I don't know. Both my boys turned out pretty good. I'm proud of both of them. Both of them have really good jobs and doing very well, and kids are fine. One of the boys had 3 boys. The other one had 2 girls. Kind of ironic to have 5 grandkids, and one's got all boys, one's got girls. So but it's a good mix. They all get along really well. And trying to guide the grandkids. You know, you can only tell them so much. The oldest one's 21 now. What am I going to tell him? He's his own man now, and he's doing all right. So all you can do is try and direct them in the right place. Keep an eye on them. Hope they don't get into something crazy. Make the right decisions. That's one of the things I try to tell them. Make a good decision. Think about. Somebody wants you to do something, think about it for a second. Does that make sense? You're all old enough to know the difference between right and wrong. You know in your mind, should you do that or should you not? And I said, if you make good decisions all your life, you'll never have anything to worry about. Stay away from the bad stuff. And so far, knock on wood, no problems. So let's hope that keeps going that way. My oldest granddaughter wants to be the first lady president. And she is totally serious about it. She is very, very serious. She was glad Hillary Clinton didn't get elected because she wants to be the first lady president. So, kind of crazy.
So overall, you said the 60s were a great time. What's one of the happiest memories you have from your school days?
Oh, wow. I had a lot of them. I really enjoyed high school. I really did. I just had a lot of fun, a lot of good people. I think that's just a lot of good friends. Everybody worked on cars. Everybody had cars. Not like it is now. You can't work on cars anymore. They're just too technical.
Tell us about the difference.
Oh, geez.
For example, what would you do when you were working on a car? Some of the things you actually do.
Kind of called them shade tree mechanics because everybody worked on their car and everybody knew how to put brakes on. You could do a tune-up. You could put spark plugs and points and spark plug wires. You had plenty of room down in there to get in the engine and work. Not now. I mean, you can't even hardly get your hand in there. So times have changed. The kids don't want to work on them. They don't care. They'd rather have somebody else fix it. But that was kind of fun too, to be able to work on your own car and keep it running and do stuff to it. Everybody did it, so you had plenty of input from everybody else. You got in a bind. How do you fix this? Somebody knew how to do it. They'd already done it. So that was kind of cool too. But it was a good time in the 60s. Lots of good times in high school.
What other thoughts do you have about anything at all?
I'm tickled to death to see the museum going. I really am. We kind of started out doing the Den as just a place to get together and see people when they came in for the fair. That was kind of the whole concept when it started. Well, then Dan Gooder started rounding up things that people gave him from high school, and we started bringing them down, and people just thought that was great. You know, we'd bring annuals in, and people would come in, sit down, get a cup of coffee, look through the annuals, and talk about times when they were in high school, see pictures that bring back memories of things that they did, and now it's just look at the things that's already been donated. It's turned into a huge idea because there's so many people that say, hey, that's a great idea. Those people are attached to Aurora High School. And to be able to keep those memories and to have a place for people to come in and see that memorabilia all the time, that's great. I can't say enough. Hope things continue in the direction they're going.
What value does that bring to you as an individual?
Oh, golly.
To have something like this available all year round?
Well, like I said, I mean, you can go back. It just brings back so many memories. Just brings back so many memories because of the things you see that brings back the high school memories. Pictures and memorabilia and people's letter jackets, and it pulls you right back together. It just brings everybody back as a group, and to be able to have the museum where you can do that all the time, not just at Farmers Fair, but to keep that pace going all year long, I think it's going to be great. I really do.
What do you think those feelings give to the community at large and the individuals who might come in here and not know anything about Aurora High School?
I think it says a lot for the people of Aurora. The people who come in are amazed at the amount of things we have, and we don't even have the museum going yet. They're just amazed at the amount of things that people are willing to put into that. So it's just amazing to bring all those people together, and people who didn't go to Aurora. I think it shows them the tightness of the community, that how all the classes, doesn't make a difference what class you were in, you're a part of Aurora High School, and just because it's gone, it's not gone. It's here in this museum, and it's going to continue to be here as long as we can keep it going.
Thanks. Anything else?
That pretty much sums it up. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.